Watch out for these common faux pas. Welcome to Mojo Travels, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 things not to say or do in France. Are you a fan of our videos? Be sure to subscribe to Mojo Travels and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're looking at things tourists should avoid doing in France so they don't come across as rude. Don't say French people love to surrender. Lots of American and British tourists make a habit out of mocking France for surrendering in the Second World War, and some also try and take personal credit for liberating France from the Nazis. It's hard to think of a situation where this strange brag is actually warranted, and yet it does sometimes happen. If you're going all the way to France on vacation, it's best to just be polite and friendly to people rather than boast about events you didn't have any part in yourself. Undoubtedly, calling anybody cheese-eating surrender monkeys is not a good look. Don't speak too loudly. Tourists having overly loud conversations are the bane of many a Parisian's life, so it's important to remember to try and be quiet and considerate of other people. If you find yourself speaking louder than everybody else around you, you'd better dial it back. Nobody wants to listen to your personal conversations after all. If you break this tacit rule at night, you could find yourself in hot water too, getting told off by an angry French person who wishes you'd just keep the noise down. It doesn't matter how much fun you're having on vacation, it's best to just lower your voice. Don't eat all your meals in tourist spots. In Paris especially, the northern districts are saturated with bistros and cafes designed to cater to tourists. But these will often be overpriced and not as good as if you just went out a little bit further. Going away from the city center or outside of Paris entirely, you can find a real, authentic dining experience. And as long as you're polite and perhaps know a little French, they'll be happy to have you. When it can be a hassle to go out of your way when you'd rather go somewhere popular, it can be worth it to find somewhere unique. Don't wave at waiters. There's a specific etiquette for how to behave in a real French restaurant, and many of the rules involve being polite and respectful of the waitstaff. Be prepared for your meal to take a little longer than it might do back home. Being patient while you wait for a server is integral rather than waving at them to get their attention. Essentially, they'll get to you when they get to you, and the long waits and perceived lack of attentiveness are because in France, the servers aren't working for tips like in the US. They also won't bring you the check until you ask them for it. Don't assume cars will stop at pedestrian crossings. While pedestrians and cyclists do have the right of way on French roads, this doesn't always work in practice. Cars are required to stop at pedestrian crossings, but only when people, quote, show a clear intention to cross. In other words, you'll often have to actually start crossing to get a car to stop for you. This makes paying attention to busy roads even more important. Nobody wants to get into a nasty traffic accident when they're supposed to be on vacation after all, so it's best to be doubly careful and make sure to look both ways. Don't say voulez-vous coucher avec moi. In no country in the world is it really acceptable to go around asking strangers if they want to sleep with you, France included. The phrase has permeated the English language thanks largely to the smash hit Lady Marmalade, and it's only gotten more prominent from there. Today, some tourists will make a habit of saying it to French locals on the streets for a joke, but it really doesn't go down well, and most French people won't think it's funny, at all. It's common enough that you may not necessarily cause offense, but you will make yourself look like an idiot. Don't expect destinations to be open on Sunday. France still observes the traditional Western day of rest more strictly than other countries. If you're not aware that lots of stores and attractions will be closed on a Sunday, it can definitely take you by surprise, so tourists are advised to be aware of this fact and plan around it. There's nothing wrong with taking a day to relax and be with your family and friends, which is what Sundays are typically reserved for. While times are slowly changing and you might find a few places open for a handful of hours, it's best not to rely on this, and to check ahead of time. Don't believe the old food stereotypes. We've all heard the classic stories that if you go to France, everybody will be eating frogs' legs and snails. But in reality, this is not true, and assuming it is will only make you look bad. While some eateries do indeed sell frogs' legs, and people certainly do eat garlic-drenched escargot, and both can be delicious, painting all French food with the same gross brush is not the way to get involved in French cuisine. France has some of the most famous restaurants in the world and untold thousands of unique dishes to choose from, so you can enjoy lots of culinary delicacies that aren't as infamous. Don't think Paris is all there is. Plenty of countries get reduced to their capital cities when it comes to tourism, and France is no exception. Paris certainly has plenty of big draws and some of the world's best sights. as well as an epically long and rich history, but it's simply not a complete representation of France as a whole. Assuming that everybody French is from or familiar with Paris is a bad move as well, and there's so much you'll miss out on if you think like this. France also has beautiful cities like Lyon, the French Riviera on the south coast, the French Alps, and on and on. Don't assume everyone speaks English. Anglophone tourists can be bad with this trait wherever they go, but in France it goes over even worse. Plenty of English-speaking tourists show up without knowing a word of French, which just makes you look rude. It's best to learn at least a handful of vital phrases and the basics of the language, not to mention actually asking someone if they speak English before you start peppering them with questions. Knowing even a few sentences, like how to ask for directions or how to order from a menu properly, will go a long way to making you look polite and personable. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from Mojo Travels. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.